Director of Cybersecurity and E-diplomacy at the DiploFoundation and is joining us from Belgrade. Just remind us, why should cyber attacks be regarded as warfare in your view?
Good evening, first of all, from Belgrade. And that's a good question, actually, whether it should be regarded and treated as a warfare or not. The point is there are various types of cyber attacks, and it matters quite much whether someone is entering the system and stealing data, or whether someone is actually putting down the power plant, for instance, or a hospital, whether they're victims or not. And there are huge discussions about what are these limits when a cyber attack can actually be treated as a warfare. Is it only about casualties? By the way, we haven't seen officially casualties in these sort of attacks, but last year there was an attack, a ransomware, a criminal-driven attack against a hospital in Germany, which is not a new thing against hospitals, particularly in COVID times. And there was one woman who passed away because when she was supposed to be admitted to the hospital urgently, the hospital was under attack. It didn't work. She had to be transported and she died on her way, whether because of that or something else. But we had the first victim, and it is a good question when we can expect to have more and more victims. And there is another interesting line, and that's espionage, for instance. You know, conventionally in international relations, espionage, political espionage, was something that was rather tolerated, it was accepted. But if you look at the mass scale of espionage, such as the SolarWinds case last winter in the US, where God knows how many sensitive documents were actually stolen, the question opens whether even espionage in this sort of cyber espionage will be tolerated anymore, and let alone all of those attacks which now fall under hybrid warfare, not an open warfare, not during the conflict, but rather something tacit, which is combined with economic measures, with energy measures, and so on. So sort of a hybrid warfare, a lot of questions to respond to still.
Have we written the right kind of laws? Do we have international agreements over the laws we need to ban this sort of behavior or to control it?
We don't still have anything to ban, and to be honest, I'm not sure we'll get anywhere near anytime soon for a simple reason. I mean, while cyberspace has become instrumental for life today, it is also instrumental for power plays among the countries. And you can see increasing cyber armament of countries, and it's hard to say it will stop. But there are some good news. In the last couple of years, within the United Nations, there were a couple of working groups of governments which managed, including the key powers and many others, which managed to agree that the international law, as we know it, actually does apply in cyberspace. Now, it is a useful step forward. There are a lot of questions on how it actually applies. It stays the same for international humanitarian law, which basically should protect the civilians in times of war. But there are opposing opinions by some countries which are saying that this is something that naturally applies in case of conflict through the cyberspace. And a number of other countries which are saying if we openly agree that international humanitarian law applies to cyberspace, that means that we accept that cyberspace is getting militarized. So there are still a lot of discussions on what is the threshold, what can we call an armed attack, and how can a country respond to a cyber attack in that case? Should it be just by a cyber attack, or by all means possible, including conventional weapons? And one of the very particular problems that is still to be resolved is the attribution. Unlike in a conventional space where you usually know where the missile came from, who produced it, and so on, with cyber attacks, it's extremely hard to do, not only on technical level, but also on legal and political level. So there are a lot of things still to be discussed. The good news is we have some bases that all countries agree. We have some cyber norms, but the process will continue in the next year. So let's stay tuned and try to push this process forward.
Bit scary prospect, Vladimir, but thank you. Vladimir Radunovic, thank you very much for joining us today.